Hi there, and a very warm 2025 to you. I hope this year is treating you well. This time what we are going to do is look at sort of light linking again and sort of caustics again. So we are going to build our own AOV for caustics, since this is not traditionally possible in Octane. So without further ado, let's grab your coffee and let's jump right in. Alrighty, some things are still the same in the new year, so let's have a look at the scene and what we are going to do today. Now, as always, this scene will be available on my Patreon for you to explore. A link is down in the description. Also, small disclaimer, we are not going to make this whole scene, we are just talking about stuff that I explored making this scene. As you can see, those caustics are nice and crisp, and the overall noise level is sort of manageable. So I basically blended and faked a little bit to split off the caustics into its different AOV to have the best control over it in rendering and compositing later. Of course, this is only going to be useful for you if you're working with caustics, but I think it's really trendy right now in jewelry, beverage design and visualization, as well as cosmetics, for example. I think we looked at this for a long enough time, so let's finally jump into 3D. Welcome to 3D land. Just another disclaimer, don't be fooled when I talk about noise freeness. We still need a ton of samples and a lot of time to clean this up. This is mostly due to the caustics tax we have to pay, as I want them to have dispersion enabled to get those nice color fringes you can see here, for example, or here. Since, as we have established, the scene is rendering rather long, what I'm going to do is take one of those impractical glasses here. Let's just find it under glasses, copy that, go into our other scene and paste it there to build up everything here. So why I'm calling this impractical? I tried to create a shape that casts nice caustics and not necessarily be practical as a glass. As you can see, the stand surface here is very minimal. But the caustics behavior of this is awesome, and since we are in 3D land and we want to deal with caustics, this is what I ended up with. So let's go back inside of our camera, let's hit render and see what we have here. Here we go. In the following, I will set up the scene for caustics. If you're a caustic pro already, then you can skip to the chapter mark that's listed down there. What I'm also going to do is delete the glasses material, because there's something connected to it that we need to do for optimization as well. So there are 3 rules for caustics. First rule, you don't talk about caustics. No, that was the wrong one. First of all, let's switch to the photon tracing. Here we go. Also, tune down those samples here a little bit. Second of all, we need a material other than diffuse to generate caustics. So let's create a specular material by going to Materials, Create, and then Specular Material here. First thing I'm always doing is going in there to Transmission and set this from 0.9 to 1 to get the full energy. Since photon caustics are enabled by a material to material level, we need to go to the index and enable it there. Now assign the material and enjoy our nice glass. If you paid attention what I've just said, we are missing one rule, and the last rule is that we need a light source in order to cast caustics. Right now we have an Octane sky in our scene with just a white material, or nearly white, but for caustics you best need a very pointy light source. So completely the opposite what we have here. Now, one of the pointiest light sources Octane has to offer, if we go to Objects and then to Lights, is the Octane Direct Light. This is a distance-based light source like our sun, but without the connection to a sun and sky system. This light is easily controlled using the angles here, and you can already see it working, but you might find something off here, in that it doesn't behave like other objects when you rotate it. And this is true because the rotation order is, to make it work, I guess, set to Y, Z, X. Whereas if you go to any other objects, the rotation order here is set to HPB. Now, if we would set this to HBB, it doesn't work anymore, or it doesn't align with the gizmo. So my easy fix for that is to just encapsulate it within a null object that we then can use to put the right angles in. By the way, you can already see the caustics appearing. Let's make them more pronounced by going to our environment and set this to a black color. Here we go. Now you can also see that those are rather blobby. As I pointed out in my first caustics tutorial, what you need to do to get rid of those blobbiness is to go to the photon gathering radius and decrease the size. As a lot of settings in Octane, the unit you're setting here is in meters, so we are down to 1 centimeter right now. And what you need to do here is strike a balance between a too grainy look and a too blobby one that we just had. So something like this, for example. But I think a value of 0.002, for example, is just the right balance. Okay, small quiz question. Is there anything you find particularly strange in this scene? And if you're now saying, yes, this glass is very suspicious because it usually moves in hertz and only appears as a multiple, I guess you're sort of right, but this is not what I mean. What I'm talking about is that the scene is completely lacking reflections of the light source itself. And this is basically the spark that started my whole tutorial idea here. Just to prove my point, if I make a sunlight, turn off our other lights, and then move it to the about same position, you can see that at some point there are fireflies forming, which then will converge into the light's reflection. Also, if I go to the sunlight and make the sun size bigger, for example 5, then we get bigger reflections of the sun, of course. What you also see is a lot of fireflies here, and this is due to the GI clamp being very large right now. But if we delete the sun again, move back to our light inside of these settings and go to the spread angle, which is the same as the sun size, and also set it to a larger value. Of course, our caustics are not as crisp anymore, but still no sign of a light reflection. So this is a massive oversight inside of Octane, I think. I can hear you say, whoa, 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 what is this? It's nice and all that you inform us about Octane bugs, but this has nothing to do with the thumbnail. As I just said, this whole situation got me thinking about optimizations. In one of my videos about optimizing materials, in the upper right corner if you're interested, I talk about blurring or slightly blurring the refractive materials. So I tried that, going to the roughness and set it to 0.002 for example, and what you see, we get some light reflection back. Now this is still very grainy and you get a lot of fireflies, so I thought there might be an option to have a different light source to cast those reflections than the light source that is casting the caustics. So my simple thought here was, can we get a sharp, nice light source to get very pristine and sharp caustics, while we get a different light source, a bigger one that samples more nicely for the rest of the scene. Of course, what this means is an option to separate the scene lighting from the caustics, and this is what we are going to do. So welcome back to the caustic bros that skipped here. To stick with trending terminology, we are going to max out your caustic knowledge. So you're going to be a caustic bro max. Let's start by making the direct light just cast caustics. What we need to do to get there is rather easy. We need to go into the lights nodes and bring forth a ray switch. Here we go. If that was on today's bingo cards for you, then congratulations. And what is this? We have some additional settings since the last time we talked about the ray switch. I'm talking about, of course, the photon ray. So let's connect it to the texture and bring down all the values to 0. All of them, but of course the photon ray here. So here we go. Now we have a light that solely casts photons. Isn't that nice? To get back the scene lighting other than photons, we are relying on an area light. Because if bigger, those are rather efficient to sample for path tracers like Octane. So let's create one by going to Objects, Lights, and then Area Light. To respect the same direction, we are going to move the area light inside of the null. then reset the transform, and now what we can do is move it further away. We need to move it further away quite a bit, because this is an area light, it has a fall off other than the other light. By moving it further away, we can get sort of rid of the fall off a little bit. Let's refine and tweak this a little bit, first of all by getting a 2000 in here. Next, let's take care of a couple of light settings. If we zoom in, you can see that we now seeing the caustics of our rectangular area light. This is because it blocks or shadows the caustics from the inline direct light. To avoid that, the simple trick is to go to our area light and set the opacity to 0. This makes our caustics very bright, because we now have 2 times the caustics in the scene. You can see this if we turn off the direct light here. You've already been given all the tools to manage that, so to manage that we need to go inside of the lights nodes and then create a ray switch yet again, and basically do the inverse from before, so leave everything on but the photon rays and then connect it. So now we just have the light lighting up the scene without any caustics. Let's get our caustics back by turning on the direct light again. The rest of it is mixing and matching basically. What I see here is that we need to brighten up our area light because it doesn't match with the brightness of the caustics. Since we might want to change the size of the area light later on, it's good to untick surface brightness, then get the power down to eventually 10 or something like that. This looks correct. So if we go into the lights details, we can then change the size without changing its brightness. Basically, it comes down to sampling again. A larger light size means better sampling, less fireflies, but also a larger discrepancy between the sharp caustics and the very soft shadow. So you have to find the balance for your scene there. I'm going with 250 here. Alright, before we extend this tutorial to our large bonus section this time, let's bring the actual topic to a close and show you how you can separate those caustics out into a AOV. I'm pretty sure most of you have already figured out what we are going to do. So what we are going to do actually is use light IDs to get the lights showing up in the correct AOVs. We are going to leave our area light at ID 1 and set the ID for our caustics light to 2. To see our multipasses or AOVs in modern speak, we need to go to Octane Render, then Render AOV Group, turn them on, go to the AOV Manager here, search for light, and then double click that 2 times. So here we go, we go to ID 1 and ID 2, and if we close that down, we can see that in the live viewer. So ID 1 is just our area light and ID 2 is just our caustics. Super nice! If you're quick-witted, the change of layout should give you an indication what's up next. Basically, in the so-called bonus section, we are going to talk about the material of the glass a little bit. As I hinted at in the beginning, where we looked at the scene, I separated the caustics behavior from the camera behavior of the glass, and this is what we are going to do first. The easiest way to get those effects separated is the composite material, so let's go to materials and get the Octane composite or blend material going. Inside of the material, what you can do is create 2 other materials. You can create more, but we just need 2. Inside of those materials again, what we need to do is set them from the standard glossy to a specular material. Don't worry, the transmission is correct here, so no need to do anything. We just assign it here and see that we still have ray traced caustics. In order to prevent that, let's go to the IOR and allow caustics here. And then 100 points to the candidate who comes up with the right idea to separate those. And yes, it's a bingo. It is the ray switch yet again. So here we go. Since we are wanting to control that via the photon ray, we need to turn off all the other rays yet again, and then connect it to the mask. Here we go. In order to prove that it's working, what we can do is go to the roughness, for example. So if we increase the roughness on the glass, then the caustics are not affected. And if we increase the roughness on the caustics, then the glass is not affected. Super nice. Now, I don't blame you for wondering what this whole shebang is good for, but don't worry, the answer is near. So in our initial scene, we had some details in the caustics here. To get them, we need a noise. So let's go with a Octane noise with our favorite projection, which is, you know what it is, XYZ to UVW. For those uninitiated, the XYZ projection is making the noise 3D and therefore seamless, so it's not reliant on UVs anymore. This makes it a perfect candidate to use in the bump channels of the material and therefore being seamless. Now, this is looking not as good as I wanted to, so let me make some tweaks. For example, here in the scale, go with 0.25. This makes it even look worse, but we can counter that a little bit with the omega and go for 0.3 to emphasize the larger scales of the noise a little bit better. Last but not least, let's go with the strength. To get there, I'm going with a color correction here. So let's go here, and in the color correction, what I want to do is set the brightness, for example, for 0.05. And then, of course, apply it to both of the materials. You can see that those caustics are now nice and detailed, but the glass itself is a little bit too bumpy. And this is where the whole trick comes in, so we can just duplicate our color correction there and then use a different value on our glass material, for example 0.025. Here we go, so the glass doesn't look as bumpy while we still get all the detail in the caustics. One of the key reasons I did the whole dual material technique here is dispersion or aberration, as I wanted to split the colors in the caustics as well as in the glass. So let's follow on my footpath, turn on dispersion, let's go to the dispersion tab while both materials are active and go with a Abbe number of around 20. Whereas the caustics here look nice and clean, you can see some additional fireflies and render overhead forming in the glass. If you remember the animation on the beginning of this video, yes, it was ages ago, you might remember that the glass was colored, and I used some absorption to achieve that, and to my surprise, the absorption mitigates all the effect of the dispersion, so it doesn't show through at all. So we have some additional render time without any effect. And this is where the dual material method here comes in. So I just turned off the dispersion of the glass, whereas I increased the dispersion of the caustics. Now, keen-eyed among you might see some artifacts here, dark caustics. No, seriously, there's no such thing as dark caustics. Maybe there is, but I don't know about it. This is just a rendering artifact that is easily mitigated. Just go into the render settings and then under the photon settings go to accurate colors, and gone are those black or gray bands. By the way, as a last step, I noticed in the light settings I set the spread angle to still be 1, so if we set it to 0, we can get even sharper caustics with some more nice dispersion goodness. And don't forget, we split the caustics into its separate paths, so if you're not satisfied with the strength of the dispersion, you can tweak that in your compositing program, for example, amp up the saturation even more. Before we close this off, a quick succession of thoughts that might be useful to you. Of course, you're not obligated to use a direct light as Caustics caster. You can use any light, for example, a second area light here. So let's duplicate that, move it back a little bit so it doesn't intersect. Disable the direct light and go into the duplicated lights nodes and invert the ray switch. Change the light path ID to give it its Caustics path here. And make it a lot smaller to get those nice sharp caustics. Here we go. A lot of scenes look more natural if you additionally light them with an HDRI, so let's bring one in that we know and love, the interior from Maxim Ross. If we turn off the other lights, you can see it's looking quite nice right now, but in some scenes, sometimes you get fireflies in the Caustics channel. If the caustic contribution of the HDRI isn't that high, you can do the same thing as with the lights. go inside here and go with a ray switch. There's a couple of methods you can apply it. The easiest one is go in the power of the HDRI and then just swipe the photon ray to 0. And last but not least, a small optimization tip. So in a scene with photon caustics, your first instinct might be to get those caustics as clean as fast as possible. But what you're actually doing is sacrificing the rest of the scene. So in the render settings, scrolling down to the photon section, what can actually help the speed of the scene is reducing the photon count multiplier and increasing the photon gather samples. So if we set this to 2 and 16, then those are getting noise-free, more aligned with the rest of the scene, leading to faster render results. So with the default photon tracing settings and 4K samples, you end up with a whopping 2 minute 58, whereas with the lowered settings that I just showed you, you're ending up on 1 minute 11 and just a tad bit noisier photons. So it really pays off to play around with the settings a little bit. And that should be it for the first video in 2025. I hope you liked it. I hope you could take away something from it. If you make nice Caustics renderings, please share them with me. And now, like always, let's thank those people who made this video possible, my Patreons. Especially my €50 tier subscribers, Shields Augustinen, Leon Studio TV, and Sultan. Also, of course, a huge thank you for my €15 tier subscribers, Doyim. For the Thieves, Render King, Alessandro Bonchio, Alessio De Vecchi, Ami Sheetreed, BVR, Chris Fritchie, Christian Grajewski, Erbe Plus Academy, Eva Nilsson Tavares, Graham Bagnall, James Conkle, Joel Mackimer, John Edward, Chris Clemson, Matthew Hall, Nico Straub, Part 1 of 2, Ralf, Reiko, Reshock, Reza Ansari, Shamus Johnson, Shiro 2049, Terry Wayne Ranson, and Yassin Rupp. Thank you all so very much for making it possible to produce those videos that you all enjoy. And hi there to the New Year's welcome section. Now, another one of my questions: are my videos too long, or are they just the right length, or are they even too short? If you're listening to this, let me know in the comments. I'm really interested. Also, what went through my head lately, since Octane 2025 Beta and Octane 2026 Alpha was released, and both come with a lot of new features, would you be interested in a series featuring every single feature that came in? Of course, the caveat being this would be in the standalone and not in Cinema 4D, since there's no plugin for Cinema 4D or Blender yet. As you can see, the new year started curious for me, and I'm interested in what you think. Hopefully it started curious for you too, and my tutorial was a fix for that. Again, if you want to help me in the fight against the algorithm overlords, let's post a hourglass in the comments down below. Just because caustic rendering still needs a lot of samples and a lot of time. And with that, as always, I wish you a great start into the week. If you're watching this later, a great overall time. And I say, happy photon shooting. Bye!